of multinational joint task force neutralize terrorists and recover heavy weapons in the Lake Chad Basin region. National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLEA arrests 2 businessmen for drug trafficking. President-elect Bola Tinubu and Lagos State Governor expressed support for Nigerian chef on mission to break Guinness World Record for cooking. On the foreign scene, polls close in Turkey with President Erdogan facing tough challenge after 20 years in power. Good evening, this is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Tunde Idowu. Multinational Joint Task Force operating in the Lake Chad Basin region have neutralized some terrorists and recovered heavy weapons. A statement today by the MNJTF spokesman, Lieutenant Colonel Kamarudin Adegoke, said the latest successes were recorded under the renewed onslaught on the terrorist named Operation Harbin Kunama. He said the ongoing operation by troops of the MNJTF further diminished the capacity of Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorists to carry out their activities in the Lake Chad Basin region. Lieutenant Colonel Adegoke said several items were recovered, including 1 Dushaka gun, Dushaka Tural, and a burnt gun truck, while several terrorists were neutralized during the encounter. The statement said a clearance operation in the general area of Ferundia in the Lake Chad Basin was successfully conducted in clearing terrorist hideouts. According to the statement, equipment recovered from the terrorists included 2 gun trucks, 2 anti-aircraft guns, 1 RPG tube, 2 AK-47 rifles, 1 RPG bomb, and 3 Toyota Buffalo gun truck tires. In Niger State, bandits have abducted Abdullahi Zuari, district head of Duge village in Rijua local government area of the state. Witnesses said several residents were also abducted from neighboring villages during the attack on Wednesday. According to reports, the bandits have demanded ransom for the release of the abducted residents. Police spokesperson in the state, Wasiu Abiodun, confirmed the incident, while Niger State Commissioner for Internal Security and Humanitarian Affairs, Emmanuel Umar, said he will have more information when the military operation in the area is concluded. Still staying with security matters, the Nigerian Army has recruited 6,251 new intakes to confront the country's security challenges. Chief of Army Staff Farouk Yahaya disclosed the figure during the passing out parade of the 84 regular recruits intake in Zaria, Kaduna. He said the recruitment is informed by the determination of the armed forces to fill its manpower void and effectively check insecurity in the country. The Army chief urged these recruits to embrace loyalty, selflessness, and other qualities which he described as the core values of the Army. And here in Osun State, the country home of Governor Ademola Adeleke was yesterday evening filled with merriment and fanfare as families and well-wishers gathered to celebrate the governor's 63rd birthday. The governor, who was accompanied by his deputy, Kola Adewusi, could not hide his joy as he sang and danced to the admiration of all. Olayinka Ali was at the event and now completes the report.
It was merriment and fanfare at the Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke's country home, Ede, on Saturday evening, where families, friends, and People's Democratic Party (PDP) political stalwarts gathered to celebrate the governor's 63rd birthday in grand style. The governor was accompanied by his deputy, Kola Adewusi, could not hide his joy as he sang and danced to the admiration of all. Governor Adeleke said all he just wanted to do was to give the Almighty thanks for adding a year to his age, his victory at the Supreme Court, and the award he was honored with just a day to his birthday. The Deputy Governor of Osun State, Kola Adewusi, thanked the Almighty on behalf of the governor and stated that Governor Adeleke is a God-fearing person who is compassionate, fearless, and loving.
He is a compassionate person, a loving person, a friendly person, a fearless person. mention it. By the time I start saying all these things, we won't leave here till tomorrow morning.
Former Deputy Governor of Ekiti State and Senator currently representing Ekiti South constituency, Biodun Olujimi, who was a special guest, described Governor Adeleke as someone who is always happy and appreciating God. Olujimi emphasized that in the short time the governor assumes duty in the state, Osun State can feel the difference, and she believes the governor will continue to ensure stability in the state.
Your Excellency, Ekiti is very contiguous to Osun State, and we have come to tell you we're with you 120%. Your Excellency, we are very proud of you. You make us proud all of the time. We are happy that in the few months that you took the reins of power in Osun State can feel the difference. And we believe going forward that you will do everything to ensure that Osun State stands that way. We are very proud of you. We are all here from Ekiti to celebrate.
Osun State PDP chairman Sunday BC felicitated with the governor on behalf of the Osun PDP, describing him as young at heart.
For your birthday, Your Excellency, I congratulate you. At 63, you are still looking 40. And I know you are going to spend many more productive years on earth. We will be here to celebrate your 70th birthday. We will be here to celebrate your 80th birthday. We will be here to celebrate your 90th birthday. After the 100, you can now choose how many years you want to spend after that.
The highlight of the event was the cutting of the birthday cake, which was presided over by Senator Olujimi, as the governor was flanked by his wives, families, and political friends. It was indeed an eventful evening for Governor Ademola Adeleke. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
Elsewhere, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says it has arrested 2 businessmen for drug trafficking. In a statement today, NDLEA spokesperson Femi Babafemi said the suspect, 49-year-old Ono Ebere and 47-year-old Christian Obuji, excreted 193 pellets of cocaine after 3 days in the custody of the agency. Mr. Babafemi said the traffickers were intercepted at the Abuja airport on Wednesday upon their arrival from Uganda via Addis Ababa on board an Ethiopian airline flight. The NDLEA also said 160 suspects were arrested in Kano after operatives raided 2 notorious drug joints. The agency said 2 suspects were arrested along the Kano-Maiduguri road yesterday with 5,000 pills of tramadol. 25 suspects were also arrested in raids across the Federal Capital Territory. The Nigerian Immigration Service says about 80 officers have gone on trial over the collection of illegal fees for the issuance and renewal of passports. Speaking with the news agency of Nigeria today, NIS spokesperson Tony Akumene said 8 officers have been dismissed in connection to the offense in the last year. He said the disciplinary measures are part of the 3-point reform agenda of the NIS Comptroller General Issa Jere. Mr. Akuneme said the CG's 3-point agenda includes passport issuance reform, tightening border security, and improving the welfare of NIS officers. The NIS spokesman said the CG has vowed to discipline officers who try to sabotage the reform process. He said employing the services of third-party agents in securing passports hinders the reform process. In the meantime, Chairperson of the Police Service Commission, Solomon Arase, says Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti must be prosecuted over an assault on a police officer in Lagos State. A now viral footage surfaced on social media yesterday showing Kuti slapping a uniformed policeman. In the video, Kuti can be seen charging at the officer on the roadside before proceeding to smack his face. Reacting to the incident, Inspector General of Police Usman Baba ordered the arrest of the musician and directed that the probe be carried out to ascertain the fact of the case. Defending his action, Kuti claimed that the officer tried to kill him and his family. In a statement today, spokesperson of PSC, Ikechukwu Ani, said the commission and Mr. Arase condemned the action while commending the IGP for his directive. Mr. Arase also commended the police officer in question for staying calm despite the provocation. He added that the police must use the incident to set a precedent that assault on police officers cannot be tolerated. In Ogun State, 4 staff of Zephyr Microfinance Bank have been arrested after one of them pushed the 50-year-old wife of their debtor, Vivian Omo, which led to her death. The suspects, whose bank is situated in Ifo local government area of Ogun State, reportedly went to the house of their debtor and started packing the belongings of the defaulters. The police public relations officer in the state, Abimbola Oyeyemi, confirmed the incident in a statement today. Mr. Oyeyemi explained that the 4 suspects have been arrested by men of the State Police Command. The PPRO said the suspect, Badmus Olalikon, Ajibade Oludare, Eniola Aduragbemi, and Femi Oloko were arrested on Wednesday. The PPRO said the Commissioner of Police, Olanrewaju Oladimeji, has ordered the immediate transfer of the suspect to the Homicide Section of the State Criminal Investigation Department for further investigation. They said the CP also warned loan agencies to stop taking laws into their hands in the process of recovering loans from their debtors, as anyone caught in such act will be arrested and prosecuted. In the meantime, police operatives in Ogun State have arrested a member of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, Adebola Sadiq, for raping a 20-year-old woman. Police Public Relations Officer Abimbola Oyeyemi said Sadiq was arrested on Friday at Owode-Egba in Obafemi Owode local government area of the state. The suspect was said to have lured the victim into the room under the pretense of buying a gift for her and allegedly raped her. Mr. Oyeyemi said on interrogation the suspect confessed to the commission of the crime, but claimed that he did not know what came over him at that time. According to the police spokesman, the victim was taken to Owode-Egba General Hospital by the police for medical treatment. President-elect Bola Tinubu has expressed his support for Hilda Bassi Effiong, better known as Hilda Bassi, the Nigerian chef on a mission to break the Guinness World Record for cooking. The chef has been getting massive support, especially from Nigerians, since she started her cooking project tagged Cook-a-thon. Thousands flooded her Instagram live session comments to give her thumbs up and words of encouragement. Senator Tinubu also joined via the comment section, describing her as Idon, meaning the real deal. He urged her not to break, but instead to break the record she is attempting to break. The current holder of the title Hilda seeks to break is an Indian chef, Lata Tandon, who set a Guinness World Record for cooking for 87 hours and 45 minutes non-stop in 2019. Hilda is attempting to cook for 96 hours, using extra 9 hours to break the world record as the first human on earth to spend such an amount of time cooking. Meanwhile, Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, today arrived at Amore Gardens, Lekki, to support and celebrate Hilda Bassi in her attempt to break the Guinness World Record for longest cooking-a-thon. We wish Hilda the very best. Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has urged the World Bank President David Malpass to use his good office to suspend any disbursement of the $800 million loan to the federal government and to request the incoming administration to provide satisfactory explanation for the loan. Serap urged Mr. Malpass and the World Bank to reopen discussion on the reportedly approved $800 million loan with the incoming administration to clarify the details on the rationale and use of the loan, because the term of office of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari ends in May 2023. The federal government in April announced its plan to spend the $800 million loan as part of its subsidy palliative measures. In a letter signed by Serap Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, the organization said the World Bank should comply with its own articles of agreement in disbursing any loans. You're watching News at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come. Polls close in Turkey with President Erdogan facing top challenge after 20 years in power. We'll bring you more on this when we return.
Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of Harami and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart and talented leader whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. James Ajibolaige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution and the People, among 6 other books. Bola Ige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba social, cultural and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bola Ige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bola Ige as a watershed character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history.
Welcome back. This is still news at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. Troops of multinational joint task force neutralize terrorists and recover heavy weapons in the Lake Chad Basin region. National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, arrests 2 businessmen for drug trafficking. President-elect Bola Tinubu and Lagos State Governor expressed support for Nigerian chef on mission to break Guinness World Record for cooking. On the foreign scene, polls close in Turkey with President Erdogan facing tough challenge after 20 years in power. No fewer than 38 residents of Takalafia and Gwanja communities in the Karu local government area of Nasarawa State have been reportedly killed by herdsmen who stormed the area recently. The pastor in charge of the Evangelical Church Winning All in the area, Reverend Daniel Danbeki, and 37 others were gruesomely murdered by the assailants during the attack, which lasted from 9 p.m. on Thursday night till the early hours of Friday. Meanwhile, a mass burial has been held for the victims of the attack, which included women and children. Deputy Governor of the state, Emmanuel Akaba, led a government delegation to the mass burial, which was conducted amidst tears from sympathizers and other members of the communities. Speaking during the mass burial, Mr. Akabe condemned the wanton killings and destruction of property worth millions of naira. He expressed shock over the killings and assured that the state government will investigate the cause of the attacks and bring the perpetrators of the dastardly act to book, adding that relief materials will be provided for the displaced people in the area. Fire has gutted 5 rows of shops at Agbeni Market in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. General Manager for Oyo State Fire Service, Mr. Yemi Akinyinka, however, said the fire has been put out. He said a security man at the adjoining bank placed a distress call to the fire service at about 4:37 a.m. when the market was not in session. Mr. Akinyinka said no life was lost to the fire and thanked the CBN Fire Service for giving access to Oyo State Fire Service to use its fire hydrant to put out the fire. On the foreign scene, polls have closed in Turkey with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan facing a tough challenge after 20 years in power. 6 opposition parties have combined forces, picking opposition leader Kemal Kilkagoli as their unity candidate. This vote comes against the background of soaring inflation and the aftermath of devastating earthquakes. If either man can secure half the presidential vote, they will be crowned winner. But if they fail, the race will go to a runoff. Candidates for a 600-seat parliament are also being selected. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country has no plans to hit targets in Russia. He said this after talks in Berlin with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, where Kiev secured a big new defense aid package. Mr. Scholz vowed to back Ukraine for as long as it is necessary, promising 2.7 billion euros worth of weapons. This includes advanced German Leopard tanks and more anti-aircraft systems to defend Ukraine from almost daily deadly Russian missiles and drone attacks. President Zelensky described the new tranche as the largest since the beginning of the full-scale aggression by Russia in February 2022. President Zelensky then traveled to the western city of Ancheny to receive the prestigious Charlie Margin Prize, an honor given for efforts to foster European unity. Previous winners include Winston Churchill, Pope Francis, and Bill Clinton. British Energy Secretary Grant Sharp has discussed reports that the Royal College of Nursing is pushing for a double-digit pay rise. He said it was frankly rather confusing that the RCN's General Secretary Pat Cullen is condemning a previous 5% offer, which he recommended that her members should accept. He reiterated that this new stance on the RCN feels a bit odd.
I find this a very curious story indeed, because Pat Cullen just recently was encouraging her members to settle for the pay rise that was put on the table that would see £5,000 go into the pockets this year of our hardworking nurses. I thought this was a great settlement. I thought it was terrific that it had been reached. It's frankly rather confusing now that, having encouraged her members to accept that deal, she seems to now be coming back and saying the opposite.
I guess maybe she's coming back because her members turned it down, so they can't have thought it was good enough.
Well, as I say, people will have to sort of judge this, but £5,000 into the pockets of nurses, more for people who are lower paid, a good contribution, because in that role there's 20% employer contribution to pensions as well. And I'm all in favour of this. I mean, I think our nurses work incredibly hard. I'm very pleased to see that settlement reached. But I think it's a bit odd for the union leaders who have said, accept this, and then come back and say, oh, actually, no, we now want to reopen something that she's already accepted once, and encourage her members to accept.
So absolutely no to double-digit pay rise then?
Well, as I say, you've got to balance that with the rest of the public purse, and there's a very generous offer now on the table, £5 grand, this year would be coming to nurses, and I think that would be a great way to get this thing settled.
And in Africa, fresh accounts have revealed that children were targeted as the first to be starved to death in the final days of a Christian doomsday cult in Kenya. Police investigating an apparent mass suicide have so far exhumed 201 bodies in a forest in the nation's southeast. A former deputy preacher of the cult told the New York Times that children were killed first, ordered to fast in the sun so they would die faster. Titus Katana said women and men were next to follow the suicide plan. Mr. Katana, who is helping police with the investigation, also described to the Sunday Times the alleged brutal treatment of the children, saying they were shot in huts for 5 days without food or water. It is alleged that the cult followers were told they will reach heaven faster if they starved to death. Official autopsies of some of the bodies in the expansive Shakahola farm near the coastal town of Malindi found signs of starvation, suffocation, and beatings. More than 600 people who are reported to be members of the doomsday cult, allegedly led by Pastor Paul Mackenzie, are still missing. Pastor Mackenzie, who is currently in police custody, denied he had forced his followers to starve themselves to death. And turning to Asia, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has called for freedom protests nationwide after his dramatic arrest on Tuesday triggered deadly protests across the South Asian nation. The 70-year-old leader said in a speech broadcast on Saturday night, a day after he was released after the intervention of the Supreme Court, that freedom does not come easily. He called for supporters to hold protests at the end of their streets and villages across the country on Sunday. On Sunday evening for 1 hour starting at 5:30 p.m. Mr. Khan, who has been slapped with a slew of cases since he was removed from power last April, was freed on bail on Friday after his detention in a corruption case was declared unlawful by the top court. In his first interview since he was bailed, Mr. Khan claimed democracy in Pakistan is at an all-time low.
I mean, I've watched these guys attacking. Suddenly these guys appeared from somewhere with sticks. These looked like commandos. And I thought, they're here to defend me because, my life is at threat. So the judge had ordered that I have to be protected. So I thought they'd come to defend me. And I thought, God, looks like there's some terrorist in the room. And then I discovered it was me they were after. So it was shocking, really, the way they beat up everyone and then they took me like some sort of a terrorist.
We are hearing from the military and the government that the security concerns around you and the threat and risk has been so high that this was the only option, that you forced their hand.
They're petrified of elections. The gap between us and all the other parties is so huge now that they're petrified that they will be wiped out. So they have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed. There have been two attempts on me. And most of my senior leadership should be jailed too. This is what they've done. They've used this to put the entire leadership of PTI in jail.
What is your strategy if you are rearrested?
Well, no strategy. I'm mentally prepared to go into jail.
Your arrest sparked widespread and violent protests. We saw military installations, satellite, houses attacked, government buildings. Do you condemn that violence? Violence that the government say your own supporters carried out?
I have always condemned all violence.
Do you have faith in the judiciary? And where do you think democracy in Pakistan is right now?
Well, the democracy in Pakistan has never taken such a battering as it has right now. I mean, all our fundamental rights are violated. This sort of thing has never happened. No political figure has ever had 150 cases, and then his house raided. Once they attacked for 24 hours, then when I was away, they threw an armored car that broke through my door, raided my house. My wife was all alone by herself. It's never happened before. So democracy is an all-time low. The only hope we have is the judiciary.
And still ahead, Debt Management Office says Nigeria's growing debt profile is the result of years of operating budget deficit. We have more on this and other business stories after this break. Please stay with us.
At birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the country. control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority of white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kuan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 Naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
You're welcome back. Now to some business news. The Debt Management Office, DMO, says Nigeria's growing debt profile is the result of years of operating budget deficit by successive governments. Speaking to the news agency of Nigeria, Director General of the agency, Patience Oniha, said a review of Nigeria's fiscal data shows that not only has the government operated increasing budget deficit, but most of the deficits have been funded through local and external borrowings. The Director General said if revenues had been greater or expenditures had been lower, the trend could have been avoided or at least reduced. She asked the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu to take cognizance of the situation and prioritize increased revenue generation. The agency had pegged Nigeria's total public debt at 46.25 trillion naira at the end of December 2022. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited says it has intercepted a barge carrying 700 barrels of illegal crude oil in Okwete Udu local government area of Delta State. The National Oil Company said it also arrested 6 suspected crude oil thieves during the operation. NNPC said the arrest was made in partnership with Tantita Security Services Nigeria Limited, a private security contractor. Speaking with journalists during an inspection of the site, Executive Director, Tantita Security Services, Warid Eniso, said the operation was conducted by a combined team of security agencies. Mr. Eniso said the report received by Tantita and Stand Mason Engineering indicated that the site was being used for activities beyond its approval limits. He said surveillance revealed that the 1,000 metric tons capacity barge was loaded with illegal crude oil but was declared as sewage. Argentina's government announced a package of measures to rein in soaring inflation and support the peso currency today, including rate adjustments, more interventions in the exchange market, and expedite deals with creditors. The Economy Ministry said in a statement that the measures include an interest rate hike by the central bank. The South American nation is battling to bring down inflation that hit 109% on an annual basis in April. It also faces tumbling confidence in the peso and dwindling foreign currency reserves that are threatening the government finances. The ministry said the central bank will also increase its intervention in the foreign exchange market and double down on its currency devaluation plan. It added that an agreement with the International Monetary Fund to dole out funds to the cash-strapped nation will be sped up as well. According to the ministry, more measures are set to be announced in coming days. And welcome to sports. Nigerian striker Victor Osimhen failed to add to his Serie A tally as champions Napoli lost 2-0 at Monza today. Monza inflicted only the 4th Serie A defeat of the season on Napoli, thanks to goals from Dani Mota Cavallo and Andrea Petagina. However, Osimhen still leads the top-scoring chart on 23 goals, while Inter Milan striker Lautaro Martinez has 20 goals with 3 games left. The Argentine was on target for Inter in their 4-2 home win against Sao Solo yesterday. And in England, Manchester City require one victory to retain the Premier League title after dispatching relegation-threatened Everton at Goodison Park. Pep Guardiola's side will be guaranteed their 3rd title in a row with 3 points from their remaining games against Chelsea, Brighton and Brentford. The loss for Everton leaves them looking nervously over their shoulders with 2 games remaining, hovering just 1 point above the relegation zone.
How do you reflect on the performance today?
Stratospheric, brutal, so really good for the first minute, and the Everton has a real momentum. I was really impressed the way he defended and transitions against Brighton, but we were there and we did really well, and still is every time we win a game we are a little bit closer, but still when you're thinking Chelsea and Brighton and Brentford, so tough, really tough game, so step by step, but of course, the game was really good for the first minute, set, and good victory.
Despite the win, some interaction on the pitch at the very end there with Yerry Mina suggested you weren't quite happy overall. What can you tell us there?
It's not necessary what he does on the pitch with the players. It's not necessary.
Can you expand on that at all?
He knows exactly what he has done, so it's not necessary. So he's a good player, and defending and that is not. It's not necessary to do what he does. At the end, for what?
In the meantime, Brentford's Super Premier League season continued with a comfortable 2-0 win over an abject West Ham United. The Bees, without 20-goal leading scorer Ivan Toney because of a hamstring injury, went ahead when Brian Mbeumo swept under Lucas Fabianski. They won the ball back high in the West Ham half and worked an overload on the right wing for the Cameroon international to slot home his 7th goal of the season. Thomas Frank's side dominated throughout and deservedly doubled their lead just before halftime when Ben Mee flicked a long throw on for Yohan Wissa to head home. West Ham made 7 changes from their 1-0 win over Manchester United last weekend, with eyes on Thursday's Europa Conference League semi-final second leg against AZ Alkmaar. Chelsea have agreed terms to make former Tottenham boss Mauricio Pochettino their new manager. He will join the club in the summer, with Frank Lampard remaining as interim manager until the end of the season. Pochettino, who has also managed Southampton, has been out of work since Paris Saint-Germain replaced him with Christopher Gelter in the summer of 2022. The 51-year-old Argentine managed Spurs for 5 years from 2014 and led them to the 2019 Champions League final. Pochettino will be Chelsea's 6th permanent manager in 5 years, following the sacking of Thomas Tuchel and Graham Potter earlier this season. And away from sports, barely 24 hours after the death of a popular Nollywood actor Saint Obi, there's a Yoruba popular actor and filmmaker, Murphy Afolabi, has died at the age of 49. The thespian was said to have fallen down today in the bathroom at his house in Ikorodu, Lagos. A filmmaker and the president of the Yoruba Movies Directors Guild, Seun Olaya, shared the sad news. It was corroborated by the managing director of the popular movie marketing company Corporate Pictures Nigeria Limited, Abdullahi Abdul Razak. Some Yoruba actors and fans have since been commenting and commiserating with the family of the deceased. Born on May 5, 1974, Afolabi got into the movie industry in 2001. The graduate of Ire Polytechnic, Osun State, appeared in over 60 movies before his death, and that's all that these are. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. Troops of the Multinational Joint Task Force operating in the Lake Chad Basin region have neutralized some terrorists and recovered heavy weapons. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says it has arrested 2 businessmen for drug trafficking. President-elect Bola Tinubu and Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu have expressed support for Hilda Basi Ifeanyi, better known as Hilda Basi, the Nigerian chef on a mission to break the Guinness World Record for cooking. And on the foreign scene, polls have closed in Turkey, with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan facing a tough challenge after 20 years in power. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Tunde Ido. Have a fruitful week ahead.